আলোতে থাকুন, ফোকাসে থাকুন, হাত রাখুন প্রজন্মের হাতে।
সুপ্রিয় দর্শক, সবাইকে শুভেচ্ছা জানাচ্ছি ফোকাস টিভি শুনতে চাই জীবনের গল্প এই অনুষ্ঠানে। ফোকাস টিভি ইউকে সারা বিশ্বের বাংলা ভাষাভাষী তথা বাঙালির দর্শক শ্রোতাদের মনে জায়গা করে নিয়েছে একের পর এক ফেসবুক এবং অনলাইনে অভূতপূর্ব অনুষ্ঠানের মাধ্যমে, অনুষ্ঠান মালার মধ্যে দিয়ে। আজকে আমরা ফোকাস টিভির জনপ্রিয় অনুষ্ঠান শুনতে চাই জীবনের গল্প এই পর্বে আমরা আমন্ত্রণ জানিয়েছি একজন আলোকিত মানুষ, সমাজকর্মী, ব্রিটেনে বেড়ে ওঠা এবং সম্প্রতি যিনি ব্রিটেনের রানী মর্যাদাকর সম্মাননা অ্যাওয়ার্ড পেয়েছেন, বাংলাদেশি ব্রিটিশ বাঙালি কাউন্সিলর লুৎফুর রহমান। উনি একজন আলোকিত ব্যক্তি, বাঙালিদের অহংকার, ব্রিটেনের বাঙালিদের মুখ উজ্জ্বল করার মতো নক্ষত্রদের প্রতি রইল আমাদের সেই শুভেচ্ছা, অভিনন্দন। আমরা ম্যানচেস্টার সিটি কাউন্সিলের এক্সিকিউটিভ মেম্বার ফর কালচার কাউন্সিলর লুৎফুর রহমান আজকের সম্মানিত অতিথি শুনতে চাই জীবনের গল্প অনুষ্ঠানে। আমরা প্রথমেই স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি এবং অভিনন্দন জানাচ্ছি তাকে, জনাব কাউন্সিলর লুৎফুর রহমান OBE। কেমন আছেন লুৎফুর ভাই?
জি, আসসালামু আলাইকুম। জি, ভালো আছি।
আমরা শুনতে চাই জীবনের গল্প অনুষ্ঠান আমরা প্রতিটি পর্ব সাজিয়ে থাকি মেধাবী এবং আপনাদের মতো তরুণ এবং গুণীজনদের নিয়ে। আপনি সম্প্রতি রানীর জন্মদিন কর্তৃক যে অ্যাওয়ার্ড গুলো পেয়েছেন, সম্মাননা পেয়েছেন OBE যেটা, এবং এটা আপনাদের মানব কল্যাণ সমাজ কর্মের উপর কাজের উপর ভিত্তি করে। তো এই ঘটনাটা শুনবো আমরা। পাশাপাশি প্রথমে আমরা শুনতে চাই আপনার জীবনের প্রথম ধাপটা, আপনার প্রাইমারি জীবন, তারপর আপনার সেকেন্ডারি স্কুল, কলেজ এবং বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়, আপনি যে আজকে যে কর্মজীবনে আজকে যে স্বীকৃতি পেয়েছেন OBE, এই গল্পে আসবো। প্রথমে যদি আপনার সেই শৈশবের কথা থেকে শুরু করেন, জনাব কাউন্সিলর লুৎফুর রহমান OBE।
I came to the United Kingdom when I was 3 years old with my family. So 1980, I came here. Lived in Longside, so I've been living in Longside for just over 40 years, in the same house, in the same area. So it's a very close-knit community that I live in. I went to a local primary school here in Longside, St. Agnes Primary School. And then I went to Burnage High School, which was not too far from where I live. Most of the young people from Longside, Rusholme, went to the same school. It was an all-boys school that we went to, and then followed on from that, I went to Stockport College for 1 year. And immediately after that, when I was 17, I decided that I wanted to enter into business. I already had a kind of an inclination towards entrepreneurship and kind of setting up businesses and initiatives. And indeed, I actually, when I was in primary school, I set up a small little tuck shop in my back garden. So I had that kind of entrepreneurship and business nature in me from a very early age. So that's where my interest lied. So following on from school and college, I went straight into business when I was 17. I did a number of similar takeaway restaurant businesses for a number of years, and then decided in 2005 that I wanted to do something different. So I went and got myself onto a financial advisory course, qualified as a mortgage advisor. Then you have to then work for somebody for a year to be able to practice on your own. So I did the 1 year probation period, and then following on from that, I set up my own financial advisory company. And again, it was based here in Longside. It was hugely successful. We did very well. And then, like with any other financial business, 2008, and the global financial crash happened. So that was the end of that. But that year, in 2008, I also got elected as a councillor, and basically I carried on doing my work in the catering trade as well as doing the council job for 2008. Yeah, so that's just a little snapshot of how long I've been here, what I've been doing in the early stages of my career in business and in work life. And of course, we'll get on to the political life and how I got involved in that shortly.
থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ আপনার এই সংক্ষিপ্ত বায়োগ্রাফির জন্য। আপনি সম্প্রতি আপনি রানীর জন্মদিন উপলক্ষে OBE পেয়েছেন। আমরা সেই এই আপনার এই আনন্দিত এবং নন্দিত কাজের জন্য আমরা আপনাকে ফোকাস টিভির পক্ষ থেকে অভিনন্দন জানাচ্ছি, আমরা কৃতজ্ঞতা জানাই। কারণ আপনি একজন আলোকিত নক্ষত্র হিসাবে আপনি সেই ব্রিটেনের বাঙালিদের মধ্যে একজন অন্যতম। বাঙালি OBE পেয়েছেন দুইজন আমরা জানি, একজন কবি দবিরুল ইসলাম চৌধুরী এবং কাউন্সিলর লুথুর রহমান OBE আপনিও পেয়েছেন, এবং MBE পেয়েছেন আরো কয়েকজন, 3-4 জনের নাম আমরা পেয়েছি। তো কেমন লাগছে আপনার এই অনুভূতিটি যদি বলেন?
I think first of all, this year's birthday honors list has been much more diverse than I think any time before. More people from Black Asian minority communities were on the list, were awarded honors. And then, of course, 5 people from the British Bangladeshi community were also on that list that I know of. There may be others that I've missed out, but that is a significant improvement from previous years. So seeing people that you can identify with, people from your background and community, is really encouraging. And for me, I think when I first got the email informing me that this was going to be presented to me, the first reaction was of disbelief. I couldn't quite believe that I would be, first of all, I would be nominated, and secondly, that I would be asked to accept a OBE from Her Majesty the Queen. So it was one of disbelief and shock in the beginning. And then, of course, we knew back in May, but the Cabinet Office and the Honours kind of Directorate, they insist that you keep this private and secret for at least until the list is published. So we had to not speak to anybody about this, which was which we did, but it was quite a difficult task not to talk about this. And then even up until the point when the official list was published, there was still a sense of disbelief that is this really something that I deserve? Because I grew up in Manchester, and I know I've looked around and I've seen many people who very selflessly for decades and decades have served our communities right across the board. I can, even if I look in my own life with my father, who has served the community for nearly 50 years here in Manchester, and he came back in the 60s when the kind of facilities and provision that we have now didn't exist for new migrant communities. It was extremely difficult working in the factories, in the restaurant, and low-skilled jobs, and language was a massive issue. So a lot of people needed that help. So the 1 or 2 people that could speak English and were able to communicate, and my father was one of them who could speak English and communicate, it was they could actually just looked after themselves. But people like my dad chose to support the community, and he's been doing that ever since. So it's greatly appreciated. I feel deeply humbled and honored by it, but I also recognize that there are many people in our communities who have dedicated their lives to selfless community service. And I think I share this award with all of them. Is on their shoulders that my generation stands on. Without their contribution, without their sacrifices, people like me, my generation of British Bangladeshis, and the kind of achievements or successes that we have been able to gain would not have been possible. We take a lot of things that we see around us today for granted, but I know that generations that came before us had to fight for those rights and had to really struggle to be able to get what we are getting today. Education, for example, a lot of my peers and colleagues, and particularly the generations after me, are able to enjoy a good education system, are able to get into white collar, blue collar jobs, and sometimes we can be complacent and forget that this is the result of a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work. So I'm really pleased that this honor to me actually means more to the community than it does to me. It's a recognition that the British Bangladeshi community has come a long way from the early migrants that came here in the 50s and the 60s. And if this acts as a catalyst for other British Bangladeshis across the United Kingdom to see this as an inspiration for them to be able to get involved and do things and make the difference in their communities, that they too also get awarded in the same way, then that would be, for me, I think it would be a good starting point, that other people can see that here's a guy who came to the United Kingdom in 1980 when he was 3 years old. He's lived in an area that is considered deprived with not very many opportunities. In terms of education, I'm not a university graduate, but I have been really successful in my work life. But I have achieved things that many, if you go back 25, 30 years when I was in high school, many would not have imagined that I would be, first of all, they wouldn't have imagined I would be an elected member of a major European city. They would not have imagined that I would be holding. I'm actually the only and the first British Bangladeshi that holds a senior cabinet position I ever held a senior cabinet position in Manchester City Council, and then to be recognised by Her Majesty the Queen for the small contribution that I've made is really appreciated, and I hope that others can see this and think, well, actually, if this guy can do this, then so can we, and anything is possible. Put the determination and hard work in, and you can do anything. You work hard, and the recognition will follow. I have never set out looking for accolades or recognition or certificates, but if my whole focus has been around being able to make a small difference to improve the lives of our communities and our people, and if I can do that, then that is reward enough for me.
Thank you so much, Manchester City Council Executive Councillor, Executive Member of Culture, Councillor লুৎফুর রহমান। সুপ্রিয় দর্শক, আবারও জানিয়ে রাখছি আপনাদেরকে, স্থানীয় ব্যবস্থাপনায় বিশেষ অবদান রাখার জন্য এই অবিই সম্মাননা পেয়েছেন আমাদের কাউন্সিলর লুৎফুর রহমান অবি। আজকে আবারও আপনাদের সবার পক্ষ থেকে শুভেচ্ছা জানাচ্ছি, অভিনন্দন জানাচ্ছি। আমি এই মুহূর্তে আমরা জানতে চাইবো, জনাব লুৎফুর রহমান, কাউন্সিলর লুৎফুর রহমান, আপনি জানেন আপনাদের মতো অনেকেই ইয়াং জেনারেশন যারা এই প্রজন্মের এই মেইনস্ট্রিম পলিটিক্সে আগের তুলনায় যতটুকু আসার কথা ততটুকু না, তবে এখনো আপনাদের মধ্যে অনেকরাই পলিটিক্সে আসছেন, এবং এই প্রত্যাশাকে কিভাবে ব্যাখ্যা করবেন জনাব লুৎফুর রহমান?
Yeah, I think in terms of political participation, I think we have made considerable progress, particularly in some parts of the country where I know a lot of people from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds, particularly from the British Bangladeshi heritage councillors, and we have 3 members of parliament also from British Bangladeshi heritage. So it is a considerable step, but I think there's more to be done around making sure that people are engaged and are participating and are exercising their democratic right. Now, you don't necessarily have to hold political office, but it's important that you exercise your democratic right, and the simplest way of doing that is by exercising your vote and going out and voting when there are elections. A lot of people that we find there's a sense of apathy, and that's across the board, across all communities, but in ethnic minority communities there's quite a bit of that, where people feel let down by politicians and feel that politics doesn't have an impact on their lives. But what I say to people when we go out campaigning and talking to people, when people open the door and say, well, actually, we don't care, it doesn't make a difference to us, but it does make a difference to you, because just by the door that you've just opened, if you just look out that door and the pavement and the roads or the bins that you've got around there, the conditions of those, or the service that you're getting is because somewhere along that chain a politician like me has had an influence in making that decision in terms of what level of service you get. You look at your taxes or anything else in your daily life, law, legislation, everything else. There's a politician behind that has made that decision. So it's important that you put people in there that reflect your values and your principles. But also, if you want to get more involved, that you should get more involved, and you can do that in a number of ways. You can do that by becoming elected councillors, or you can by elected MPs or mayors, or you can do that by volunteering or by getting involved in community organizations or groups. And a number of people do that. There are boards and other kind of forums where the trustees are required, and people, school governors boards are also an important place for you to have your say and be able to contribute. So there are lots and lots of ways for our communities to be able to get involved and participate in that democratic process and in civic life. And I think there is still, whilst I accept there's been quite a considerable amount of progress, but there's a long way to go before we get the level of participation and engagement that we need in order for us to be able to shape the policies and the legislation that affect our communities, the areas that we live in, and the United Kingdom as a whole.
Thank you. আমি আবারও কমিউনিটি প্রসঙ্গে চলে আসছি, জনাব লুৎফুর রহমান অবি। আমরা জানি একটা ইয়াং জেনারেশন এই গ্রেট ব্রিটেনের, বিশেষ করে বাঙালি বলেন অন্য যেটা কমিউনিটিতে আছেন, সব ইয়াং জেনারেশন কিন্তু একটা বিপ্লবী হচ্ছে, বিভিন্ন ক্রাইমের সাথে জড়িত হচ্ছে। আপনি কমিউনিটিতে কাজ করেন, সো এ থেকে উত্তরণের জন্য কি করা উচিত মনে করেন?
Well, there's a couple of things. I am responsible for young people youth strategy in Manchester City Council, and I was the cabinet member for schools and education for 2 years. And there's an issue around stereotyping young people. So a lot of people use a blanket approach that a lot of young people are getting into crime. A lot of young people are into antisocial behavior and not being able to develop and progress in the way that they are. That's a very small minority of young people that are, whether they're in the criminal justice system or whether they're engaging in antisocial behavior. And I'll give you an example to just kind of impress on you the numbers. In Manchester, we have 180,000 people that are considered young people. Out of that, you would find about 600 or 700 people that we would call young people that have challenges. That leaves the vast majority of young people who are engaged in positive activities, contributing to their community, making a valuable impact in the United Kingdom. And that is what we tend to forget. We tend to start from the negative and that small minority when we should be looking at the positives and that large majority of young people. Of course, we've got issues around those young people. One young person who is not in a positive environment, who is in the criminal justice system, or who is engaged in antisocial behavior is one young person too many. And we have to do all we can to be able to provide the support and the infrastructure and the provision that those young people need for them to be able to unlock their potential, because every single young person has the potential to be able to do whatever they want. And when we look at those young people who are in difficult circumstances, there are a lot of underlying issues that contribute to them being that. It could be anything from issues at home to issues in school, issues elsewhere. And it's about understanding and giving that young person the space to be able to come talk to you understanding, or somebody understanding their predicament, giving them the advice and the guidance that they need. What I've seen in recent years is, if you look at some of the biggest global issues of our times, climate change, race, Black Lives Matter, and you look at who's leading the debate on those campaigns, is actually young people that are leading those debates. And yet, when we talk about young people, we start from the point of where the small minority of young people are not doing too well, but we forget the large majority of young people who are making those massive contributions in society. So, I think in terms of, for us in Manchester, certainly the priority is making sure that all young people have the opportunities. And this is one of the reasons that I actually got involved in politics to start off from. Growing up in Longside, looking around when we were growing up, there wasn't the same level of provision or facilities available to me and my peers as maybe there was in some more affluent areas. And as I grew up, we ended up getting less and less because there were reductions in youth provision for young people. And it was that thought actually that I thought, well, who is actually making these decisions that is having an impact on our lives? And that is one of the reasons that I got into politics, to be able to provide the opportunities and the platform for future generations of young people to be able to achieve their aspirations and unlock their true potential. So, as a councillor who's lead responsibility for young people, there is a number of things I've done in the council to try and improve conditions for young people. One is around provision. So we have brought together all of our neighbourhood services. So that is libraries, sports and leisure, cultural activities, all of these children's services, everyone, all of that together, and are presenting a universal offer for young people. So there's provision that is available for young people, different forms of provision, right across the city in every single ward of the city. That's around provision. The other part of that is around youth engagement and youth participation. So we have in Manchester the Manchester Youth Council, and just recently we have transformed that into a membership organisation. So every young person in this city, we expect to be able to join that youth council and then participate in the way that they want to. All members of that youth council are able to then put themselves forward for what we've done in Manchester, which is the first ever shadow youth executive. So in the council, you have 10 people who make up the executive of the council. So that's a leader, 2 deputy leaders, and then you have 7 cabinet members like me who hold various portfolios. So with the shadow youth executive, every executive member on the council will have a young person shadowing them, who will be able to have their voices heard, make input into policy, into strategy, and have a real say on the decision-making table. This is unique to Manchester, and it's the only city that has actually done that. And I hope that many others give young people a seat on that decision-making table so that they can really shape the policies that will affect them in the future. So there are a number of things we're doing around that. But for me, it's contribution making, whilst also dealing with and tackling the issues that the challenging issues that young people face as well.
Thank you. কথা বলবো আপনার সাথে। আমরা জানি কোভিড-19 এর কারণে অনেক কলেজ, বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়, এমনকি সেকেন্ডারি স্কুল থেকে শুরু করে ইউনিভার্সিটি পর্যন্ত স্টুডেন্টরা ইউনিভার্সিটিতে সঠিকভাবে যেতে পারছে না। কারণটাই হলো কোভিড-19 এর কারণে, করোনা ভাইরাসের কারণে। সো স্টুডেন্টদের জন্য যারা ঘরে বসে লেখাপড়া করছে কিংবা বাইরে যেতে পারছে না, তাদের জন্য আপনি একজন কমিউনিটি অ্যাক্টিভিস্ট হিসেবে কি বলবেন?
Look, this has been probably the most difficult time for young people, and particularly for young people who are studying in college and university. And we know last year, those young people that were supposed to sit their GCSEs and A-levels who didn't get the opportunity to sit their exams, and we know many of them didn't get the expected grades that they were hoping to get. So that's been a really difficult period for young people. And I know a lot of young people want to get back into the college and school environment so that they are able to learn for a number of reasons. One is young people want to do that, but also if we do not get them back into an environment where they can pick up on their education, then we're going to lose a generation of young people who will not be able to achieve the academic attainments that they would have achieved otherwise if we weren't under this current crisis. It's, a lot of our universities and colleges have reopened, and in order to accommodate and make sure that young people are not losing out on their education, they are using a number of methods. So some of them where they can, they are using face-to-face lessons, and others where they are not able to, they're using online lessons. Now, I know online lessons are not the same as physical lessons, and online lessons cannot compensate for that face-to-face kind of tutorship that you get in a school environment. But we are still very much in this crisis. The virus hasn't gone away, and indeed we're probably at the brink of a second outbreak of this. So, we have to balance this between keeping people safe, but also making sure that students and pupils don't miss out on their education. And I know a lot of our cultural institutions, our educational institutions, are doing all they can to be able to support the students in this very difficult time. I also have to give credit, actually, to a lot of our students and pupils, because if you look at the level of compliance between young people and students during the peak of the virus and when we had the lockdown, they have been extremely patient and extremely compliant with the rules and regulations that the government has imposed on us. And that is credit to them, because a lot of young people, I know if this was many years back during when I was younger, then I'm not entirely sure that level of compliance would have been there. So, young people have played a vital role in this, and it is our responsibility as local politicians, as national politicians, to be able to do all we can to put in the mechanisms that we can to get them through this period, give them the support, give them the education that they need, so that they can build on their future. And then when we get back to normal, give them as much support and additional resources as they need to be able to realize their ambitions and to be able to achieve what they would have achieved if they weren't going through this difficult period.
প্রশ্ন রাখবো। আমরা জানি ইয়াং জেনারেশনের বেশিরভাগ একটা অংশ আমরা ড্রাগ এবং নাইফ ক্রাইমের দিকে চলে যাচ্ছি। গ্রেট ব্রিটেনে, আমরা সারা বিশ্বের মতো গ্রেট ব্রিটেনও সেটা বিদ্যমান। এই প্রসঙ্গে এ থেকে উত্তরণ এবং ইয়াং জেনারেশনটা কিভাবে এ থেকে উত্তরণ পাবেন, ফ্যামিলিগতভাবে কি করা উচিত, প্যারেন্টসরা কিংবা গার্ডিয়ানরা, এ থেকে এবং এর সঙ্গে আপনার মন্তব্য।
Look, as I said before, that's a small minority of young people. But yes, you're right. There is an issue around drugs, around youth violence and knife crime. But and you pointed out that what role do parents have? Actually, as a matter of fact, everybody has a role to play in this. There is a saying: it takes a village to raise a child. So a lot of people think, you can send your child to school and school will raise them. That is not enough. Parents have to take an active role in the lives of their children and have regular conversations, find out what your child is going through, where they're going, who they're hanging about with. Are there any issues or challenges that they're facing? Are there any issues in school? Are they doing what they expect to be doing in school, or are they finding it hard and difficult? Because sometimes young people who find concentrating on coursework in school tend to rebel by doing something that is antisocial or getting involved somewhere to find that level of acceptance. So it's important that parents maintain regular communication with their children to be able to understand, but also the community has a role. The community has a role to make sure that if they do see young people who are not getting the support that they need, to be able to see if they can support them, signpost them into the right direction, get them the help that they need. So it is a combined responsibility from the schools, the teachers, the parents, the community, to be able to make sure that we raise the future generation of the United Kingdom in the best possible way that we can.
Thank you. আমরা আরেকটা বিষয় জানি, এখন কোভিড-19 এর কারণে গ্রেট ব্রিটেনে চলছে বিজনেসের সেক্টরগুলোতে, যে আমরা দেখছি বিজনেসের হ্রাস পাচ্ছে, যেগুলো নিম্নগামী। তো গভর্নমেন্ট চেষ্টা করছে যে সেগুলোকে অগ্রগতির দিকে নিয়ে যাওয়ার জন্য, পাশাপাশি অনেক সহযোগিতা করছে। এ প্রসঙ্গে আপনি কি বলবেন? বিজনেস
Well, we know that businesses have struggled during this period. In the immediate lockdown, when we had the first lockdown, where when everything was locked down. The furlough scheme and the government grant scheme helped some businesses, but there were a lot of people that didn't get the help that they needed. A lot of small businesses didn't get the help, and particularly the self-employed and freelance workers didn't get the support and the help that they needed. But I think the real question now is this scheme that they've introduced this time around. Was the first furlough scheme was 80% of people's wages, which is a reasonable amount to be paying people to support them during this difficult period. The current scheme that the Chancellor has announced of 66 or 67% is not enough, and it's going to push a lot of people into hardship and a lot of businesses on the brink of closure, which is going to damage the economy, which is going to have a long-term impact on society and on our communities and individuals. So what we've been doing in Manchester is saying, well, look, actually, yes, of course, we understand that we have to keep people safe from this virus, but at the same time, if people aren't working, that has an impact on your health. If people haven't got the income to be able to provide for their families, that has an impact on their physical and mental health. And all of these things have got to be taken into consideration. But also, if we leave, all of these issues that we are piling up in terms of joblessness, poverty, mental health issues, physical health issues, we know that 1 million breast cancer screening tests have been missed. We know that cancer patients aren't getting the treatment. We know that you can't see a GP. We know you can't see a dentist as you would do under normal circumstances. So there are going to be a number of health issues that are going to present themselves in the coming years. And that's why it's important that the government put the right financial package in so that they can support people through this difficult period. Giving them a third of their wages is going to see mass closures of businesses and mass job losses. We will probably see job losses to the scale of what we saw back in the 80s, actually maybe even worse. So the government has a role to play here, and from a Manchester and a greater Manchester perspective, actually, from a northern perspective, we know the leader of our council has made the case to government to make a plea, actually, that we need more support. If we are going to impose lockdowns and restrictions for the city, then we need to be able to do that with the right financial package and support. That hasn't been forthcoming at the moment, and it is extremely worrying for us, and particularly for minority communities. And I know, within the Bangladeshi community and the Pakistani community who predominantly work in the catering trade or in the taxi trade, both of those are going to be impacted severely if there's no hospitality industries open, if there are no events, if there's nothing for people to go to. Then they're not going to be using the taxi services. The restaurants are going to be closed, so there's no jobs there. So it's worrying times, and it's going to be difficult. And so far, we haven't seen the government provide the financial package and support at the scale that it needs to be provided it to be able to support those people through this difficult time.
Thank you. আমরা জানি ছোটখাটো দেশে এসেছিলেন এবং কলেজ বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ে পড়েছিলেন, সেই কোনো স্মৃতি কিংবা গল্প কি আপনার মনে আছে যেগুলো জানানো উচিত যারা অনুপ্রাণিত হবে আপনার সেই গল্প?
Yeah, well, school was primary school was interesting. I think when I went to the high school back in those days, I actually went to high school, and actually it's quite ironic because we've seen over the last few months the Black Lives Matter protest and kind of a real focus on race equality. And the year that I went to high school, the year before that, there was a racially motivated murder in that school, and one young person, again from Bangladeshi heritage, actually was killed. And immediately after that, there was the kind of the challenges that arose from that. So there was, and it was at the time when the National Front were at its peak, and there was a lot of racism within society. So it was an interesting period and a difficult period for me to go there, but one that has actually shaped the kind of view that I have in terms of race equality. So I was the lead member for race at Manchester City Council. And I think, uh, a lot of what I did in that role was drawn from the experiences that I had growing up in school and in college and seeing and experiencing racism firsthand. And equally with the Black Lives Matter protest and some of the responses that we are making within my portfolio and across the city, a lot of that is shaped from what I kind of experienced growing up in the city. But again, it was an interesting time actually, putting aside all the challenges, because it is in school, and it is in those places where you make the friendships that you make that last for your lifetime. All of my majority of my friends actually, um, as my friends that I went to primary school with, who I then went on to high school and college with, and 25 plus years later, we are still friends, actually more like family now. So it is, it's important that that part of anybody's life is cherished, and for everybody, it's a good memory to be part of. And sometimes, actually, most of us, as we grow older, we think about, well, if we were younger and back in school, what would it be like? And it'd be, stress free, and you wouldn't have to worry about paying the bills and all the rest of that. Which, as you grow older and become adults and responsible, you have to start thinking about all of those things.
আমরা অনুষ্ঠানের প্রায় শেষ পর্যায়ে আমরা চলে এসেছি। আমরা যতটুকু জানি, আমাদের বাঙালি কমিউনিটির ব্রিটিশ বাঙালিদের বুক উজ্জ্বল করেছেন আপনারা কয়েকজন। অবি, আপনি কাউন্সিলর হন, অবি স্বীকৃতি পেয়েছেন ব্রিটেনের রানীর মর্যাদাকর এই সম্মাননা। আমি যেটা জানতে চাই, আপনার এই আনন্দিত এবং অ্যাওয়ার্ডের স্বীকৃতির জন্য আপনি কাকে উৎসর্গ করতে চান আপনার এই আনন্দ?
I put on my social media. I think for any of us, for anybody, you are who your parents shape you to be, and it is that nurturing and that love that you get from home and from your parents, and that inspiration is what shapes what you end up becoming. And if I look back in my life, if there's if I have achieved anything, any success or anything, it is because of the sacrifices and the love that my parents have shown. And particularly my mum, who very unfortunately passed away this year in March. I look back and I remember the advice and guidance that my mum gave me on a regular basis, so that we talked about young people who were in antisocial behavior. And if you didn't have what I had at home, then your journey could go in a different way. But to end up where I have ended up, all credit actually goes to my mother and my father. My father is my inspiration. I kind of, most of what I ended up doing was what he did. I went into the restaurant and catering trade, into business, because I saw him doing that. I went into community service, and that's, politics is community service, is because of what he's done. I've seen him, uh, you know, sacrifice and give his time and energy and effort to helping the community around him on a regular basis. So this award is a testament to what my parents have instilled in me, and it's a testament to them. So it's their award more than anybody else's. And of course, it's an award I think that the British Bangladeshi community can take inspiration from, because if it can inspire a few British Bangladeshis to think, well, actually, doesn't matter the background you come from, doesn't matter the difficulties that you face in your life. If you have that support in your family, your parents are there, and if you put the determination and hard work in, then you can achieve anything that you want to achieve.
ধন্যবাদ, থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ আপনার মূল্যবান সময়ের জন্য। আমরা অনুষ্ঠানের প্রায় একেবারে শেষ পর্যায়ে চলে এসেছি। আপনি জানেন, ফোকাস টিভি একজাক তারুণ ইয়াং জেনারেশন, ইয়াং মিডিয়া কর্মী, মিডিয়া ওয়ার্কার দ্বারা পরিচালিত হচ্ছে এবং সুন্দরভাবে বাঙালি বাংলা ভাষা বাংলা সংস্কৃতিকে তুলে ধরছে এবং বাঙালিদের আলোকিত মানুষদের কথা তুলে ধরছে, সংস্কৃতির কথা তুলে ধরছে, বাঙালিদের অহংকার হিসেবে কাজ করে যাচ্ছে এই বিলেতে এবং সারা বিশ্বে। ফোকাস টিভির দর্শকদের উদ্দেশ্যে আপনার শেষ মন্তব্যটি যদি বলেন।
Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for having me on this show, and I hope that what I've talked about today would be in some way support our community and inspire our community to be able to get involved, participate, make the contribution that they are already making, but also to make sure that things don't go by without them having their say on this. So thank you very much once again for watching.
থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ, আপনি মূল্যবান সময় দেওয়ার জন্য আপনার প্রতি আমাদের কৃতজ্ঞতা ভালোবাসা রইল। আগামীতে আমরা এরকম আরেকজন আলোকিত ব্যক্তিদের নিয়ে আসবো, গুণীজনদের নিয়ে আসবো শুনতে জীবনের অনুষ্ঠানে। ফোকাস টিভির সঙ্গেই থাকুন, আপনাদের সুস্বাস্থ্য দীর্ঘায়ু কামনা করছেন। কোভিড-19 সময় আপনারা ঘরে থাকুন, সরকারের নীতিমালা পালন করে নিজে ভালো থাকুন এবং অন্যকে ভালো থাকতে সহায়তা করুন। এই প্রত্যাশায় শেষ করছি আজকের এই ফোকাস টিভির শুনতে চাই জীবনের গল্প। এই আগামী পর্ব দেখার আমন্ত্রণ জানিয়ে এখানে শেষ করছি। আল্লাহ হাফেজ।
আলোতে থাকুন, ফোকাসে থাকুন, হাত রাখুন প্রজন্মের হাতে।